is the FRC Roundtable, coming to you all the way from Minnesota. Your host team 2052 Nightcrawler presents this weekly FRC gathering where FIRST Robotics competition teams take cooperation off the field. Share your knowledge, give and get advice, solve a challenge, or celebrate what makes your team special. 3, 2, 1, go!
There we go. The recording has been started. Welcome, everybody. Tonight, John's back. John's, if you don't know, John's an LRI, and he gave a presentation 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was 3 weeks ago, about how to make bumpers and all the new bumper rules. He called it one of the most significant updates to robot construction in a very, very long time. And tonight, John's back, and he's going to tell us all about how to avoid getting caught up with inspection and having to make major changes at your first event. So, John, the floor is yours. Take it away.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Before I start, I want to say, ask questions. If you guys have questions as we're going through this, please go ahead and ask as we're going. You'll notice we have different segments here talking about different parts of inspection that we'll be looking at, and so it's probably best to get the questions associated with the subject as we're going through. There we go. So we're going to talk about basically how teams tend to fail inspection and what you can do to avoid running into those problems. Have contact information here on the last slide as well. If you guys have questions before your event, please reach out to your LRI. They are by far the best people to answer those questions and help you with any design issues you may be dealing with. Before we get started, a few process and inspection adjacent items to talk about. First is that we are now doing weigh-in during load-in. So you can optionally, if you are ready for inspection, bring your robot up to the inspection station during the load-in period, either Wednesday night or Thursday morning before pits open, in order to get through the weighing portion of the inspection. That lets us cut down that line of robots at the inspection station and get basically straight to actually inspecting your robot when pits open on Thursday morning. There's no benefit to being the first ones to load in versus the last ones to load in. When pits open on Thursday morning, every team who is ready for inspection needs to send a student up to let us know that you are there and ready to get started. At that point, you will be put on the list in the order you come up, and we'll get inspectors going as quickly as we can. Also want to point out that pits are no longer open until 8 or 8:30 or whenever it's been in the past. Now they will be closing as soon as practice matches are over. So you do not have those couple of hours after practice matches finish to deal with inspection. So we strongly encourage everyone to get inspected early so that we can make sure that you actually pass before we get to the competition matches on Friday. Along with getting inspected early, there are a few benefits that you can enjoy. The first and biggest one is access to the practice field. That was new last year, but again, this year, you will need to be inspected in order to access the practice field at the events. It's not to be confused with the competition field. If you have scheduled practice matches, you can attend those even if you are not inspected, assuming your robot is safe. That means you have to have bumpers, and it generally needs to be safe on the field. But if you get inspected, then you can access the filler line. So any teams who are not ready for their practice matches will leave gaps, and those gaps will be filled by teams from the filler line. So getting inspected early lets you get in more practice matches, get more driving experience, and overall is a great benefit for your team when it comes to being ready for your matches Friday morning. All right, our first item that typically causes teams to fail inspection is weight. Being at the Egan Week 0 yesterday, I can tell you that weight is an issue this year. We had a lot of teams that were really pushing it on weight in the 114 area, and several teams who were over on weight, up to 118 or 120. So please be aware that that robot weight limit is only 115 pounds this year, and make sure that you weigh your scale as soon as you can, or weigh your robot as soon as you can, using a good scale, so that you can make sure that you are underweight when you get to competition. I also want to point out that we have this total weight limit of the robot, which is the robot plus the bumpers, is 135. That does not mean that you are limited to 20 pounds for your bumpers. If your robot is 60 pounds, then your bumpers could be 75 pounds. There really is a big variation there, but it also means that those first 20 pounds for your bumpers, it's essentially free weight. So go ahead and use it, and build nice, sturdy bumpers that will survive through competition. I know I saw one team yesterday who had half-inch plywood on their bumpers, which I'm worried will not make it through the season. So don't be afraid to beef up your bumpers a little bit and make sure that they survive. Size. This is the next big issue that trips up some teams. We still have that 120-inch frame perimeter that hasn't changed. We've had that for a while now, so teams are getting pretty good at meeting that. The 3-foot 6-inch tall starting configuration can be an issue. I know many teams are pushing that really close because they want that extra height to reach up to that level 4 of the reef, but make sure that you are underneath that. We also have that 1-foot 6-inch extension limit outside of your frame perimeter horizontally. I know that one or two teams yesterday had an issue with that they have to go back and fix. So please make sure that you check that. It is not just at the, when your arm is straight out or whatever, it is through the entire motion of your arm. So if your arm, it has a big intake on the end, and as it swings up, the corner of that intake goes further, that's a problem. So please make sure that you check that through the entire motion of any manipulator you have. I also want to point out that there is no maximum playing height after the start of the match. Your robot can extend up as high as it needs to. So that is certainly good for teams, especially those scoring on level 4 of the reef or trying to score the algae up top. And like I say here, size is one of the hardest ones to fix at competition. It usually means dismantling your robot, removing functionality as it no longer fits. And I absolutely hate telling teams that the robot is not meeting the size requirements. And of course, we can recheck robots at any time, so make sure that your robot is not going to get out of shape. Teams who build straight up on their frame perimeter with no diagonal supporting or anything like that risk having that frame turn into a trapezoid and bend outside their frame perimeter. So please make sure you check that. Bumpers. As Scott mentioned earlier, bumpers are different this year. I had a talk on that a few weeks ago. Please go ahead and look that up on Nightcrawler's presentations. It's out there on their YouTube channel. We go through all of the bumper rules in detail. So I obviously don't have time tonight to do that since that took an entire call. Some of the highlights are the new soft padding options that are available. Your backing material can be made of anything. It doesn't have to be 3/4 inch plywood, although of course 3/4 inch plywood is still a great option. Bumpers have a minimum height, but no maximum height. So you can have 3-foot tall bumpers if you want this year. And there are wider ranges for hard parts and padding depths that let you get more protection and more sturdy bumpers so that your bumpers won't be breaking. Your bumpers do still need to cover the entire robot perimeter, just like they have the past few years. The bumper zone is now redefined, so it's an area that needs to be covered by your bumpers, not an area that your bumpers have to exist in. So that is a different way of looking at that bumper zone that really focuses on ensuring that we have bumper-to-bumper contact with the flat portions of the bumpers to prevent robots from riding up on each other. You do still need to be able to remove your bumpers for sizing and weighing, which means when you come up to weigh in, you will bring your robot up with your bumpers off and bring your bumpers with you. Make sure your battery is out when you're weighing the robot as well. There is a guideline that bumpers should be removable and installable by one person in less than 10 minutes, right? You want this to be quick and easy to change your bumpers. Obviously, if you have reversible bumpers, that becomes a little easier, but they are also harder to make. So please consider that as you build your bumpers. And a reminder that good-looking bumpers help to make your robot look good. They set a good first impression for your robot that cannot be denied when teams are going around scouting in the pits or watching matches. Sharp edges. We're going to be looking for sharp edges on robots. The areas we particularly care about are areas that interact with the game pieces. We do not want to see algae getting popped out on the field. We don't want to see the coral getting all torn up with big scratches or gouges taken out of it. We're also going to be looking at areas where people are likely to put their hands. So around your main breaker or places where, when you're in the pits, you might accidentally just rest your hand. We want to make sure that you aren't going to be getting cut and that everyone your team number has to be on your bumpers. It's also highly encouraged that you put your team name or logo on there, your sponsors, make your robot colorful, with your team colors, make it identifiable, and help the announcers and other teams recognize who your sponsors are and who you are when you're out there on the field. The team numbers on the bumpers are a little bit different. That 3 3/4 inch tall is less than it was last year, and the 1/2 inch stroke width, I think, is slightly smaller than previous years as well. This is intended to better support off-the-shelf iron-on team numbers that we have found were just slightly less than what we had legal in the past. Electrical. All right. First thing and biggest thing Nate, you have a question.
Yeah, just a quick question, John, just to clarify on your on slide number, what you have up now on the team name, number, and sponsors. Just to make sure, you said on the bumpers, you should only have your numbers, right? Or can you have other things? Okay.
Just only the numbers or the FIRST logo.
Okay, those are the only two things allowed. Okay, just want to make sure that was clear.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
All right, electrical. Biggest thing here, you have to make sure your battery is securely fastened in place. We want to see a strap or something to bolt it down so that it cannot move when it is in the robot. This is to your benefit. If the battery comes out on the field, you will be disabled and you will no longer be driving. If your battery comes loose inside of your robot, it will bounce around and break something. So make sure that it is secure. Particularly with climbing on the cages this year, we expect to see a lot of robots doing acrobatics in the air, and these battery straps will be tested. So make sure that they are secure. You need to insulate your battery terminals and your main breaker terminals. Basically, that entire path between your battery and the PDP needs to be fully insulated. We do not want to see shorts on that path because it may not be affected by the breakers and it can let a lot of current out very quickly. You have to use the appropriate sire and the wire size and color wires for everything. I haven't really seen that be much of a problem in recent years, but please double check that your breaker sizes match your wire sizes. You can only use the allowable motors from this year's rules. That has been expanded this year. There are a few new motors, some that I haven't even seen in person yet. So please, double check if you're using anything that you are not familiar with. Also, want to note that you can only use 4 propulsive motors. So these are defined as motors that provide propulsion to the carpet. Swerve drives typically have 2 motors per module. One of those is a steering motor, and the other is your propulsive motor. That steering motor is not part of that 4 motor limit, so swerve drives are generally just fine. Your electrical system has to be isolated from the robot frame. The biggest area where we see problems with this is where you have wire wrapping around aluminum somewhere. particularly if you have a cut hole or something for a wire to pass through. It is very easy for that to scrape off the insulation or damage the wire such that it shorts out. We also see it with cameras a lot, and as well as LEDs on the robot. A lot of these do not have fully insulated backs, or the frame is intentionally grounded for safety reasons in consumer electronics. If you have those, they have to be mounted on a non-conductive material. Polycarbonate or wood make great choices. I also strongly recommend that you label things. You need to know where things are going, so when you run into a problem, you know which wires to pull. It really does help. It can be most easily done with a couple colors of electrical tape on the ends of the wires, or you can even buy little numbered pieces of tape that you can pull and rip off, just like you get at the DMV or something, and wrap around the wires so that you know where everything is going. Yes, Nate again.
Yeah, I just got a quick question. I think I saw in the rules this year that we're allowed for the power that supplies the RoboRio as well as our radio to use, instead of just a normal fuse, a breaker, more or less like what we use for our other motors. Is that correct?
Yes, those small fuse areas at the end of the PDP are allowed to have resettable breakers in them. Those will not be the same breakers that you have on the rest of the PDP. The slots are not big enough for those ones, but that is legal. All right, robot signal light. You have to have one of these. It has to be wired correctly. So the Allen Bradley one here is the most common one you see. There's also another one from Andy Mark that's wired up a little bit differently. So please make sure that it is wired correctly. The biggest thing teams forget is this little jumper here on the Allen Bradley. Fortunately, that is a very quick fix if you forget it. We have a new radio this year. The open mesh radio is no longer legal, and in fact, it will not work with the field this year. Just flat out will not work because we're operating on a different Wi-Fi band at our competitions. So you must use the Vivid hosting radio, not the old white radio. So the Vivid hosting radio is black. It's a rectangle. It's actually, I think, a little bit better because it gives you more solid mounts for electrical to power the radio, so that you don't have to rely on that barrel jack. You don't have to go through a PoE injector. It's got some nice connectors right on the radio. Really is designed for FRC use. They do recommend that you mount this radio to aluminum. So mount it to metal on your robot so that the metal can act as a heat sink and pull heat away from the robot, from the radio, so it doesn't get hot while being used. It's also recommended to mount vertically if possible. That is the best orientation for this radio from what we've been told. And like we said, it uses the new Wi-Fi 6E during competition, which hopefully means less field issues with communications, as there are a lot. It's a lot bigger band. You have a lot more channels, and other Wi-Fi typically is not using it yet. So hopefully that improves things. We will find out at week 1. Pneumatics. Not many teams are using pneumatics anymore, but if you are, know that you do have to still follow all the pneumatic rules. That means you have to have an onboard compressor that meets the specs, and it has to shut off at 125 psi or less. Your pressure relief valve has to be attached directly to the compressor, and it must be set to the appropriate vent pressure. That means it has to vent at 125 psi, right? It can't be venting higher than that. And we will test this by running your compressor to overpressurize your system at the event. There has to be an easily accessible vent valve. This ideally would be placed near your main circuit breaker. That way you can vent the pressure and turn off the robot all in one location. And when you turn it off and vent that pressure, it needs to vent all of the air in the system. All pneumatic components have to meet your minimum pressure rating, and you cannot modify any of the pneumatic components except as specifically allowed in the rules, which basically means you can cut the tubing, you can press out pins that are intended to be able to be pressed out, but no painting, no drilling, no sanding, nothing of that nature if you're using pneumatics. Firmware versions. Your RoboRio has to have the latest firmware image loaded. So please double check that. We have had cases where FIRST has released a new RoboRio firmware the week before week 1. So please, please, please make sure you check that in another week. Even Tuesday or Wednesday before you load up your trailer to make sure that you don't have to do any of that work. It can be a real pain getting that loaded during the competition. If you're using CAN, which most teams are these days, devices have to be programmed with the latest firmware version. So please make sure that you check your various vendor tools to make sure that your devices are all updated. Your driver station has to also have the latest firmware version installed. So please make sure that is updated as well. I also found out yesterday that the radios need to be on version 1.3.0 or later. So please check those and make sure that you update those. Fortunately for us, the kiosk at the event will prompt you to update them if your radio is not updated, and it will perform the update for you at the kiosk. But as you can imagine, having every team at the event updating their radio at that kiosk is going to slow things down for everyone waiting in line to update their radios. So please help us out and update your radios before you get to the event. Yes, Robert.
What was that radio version again?
1.3.0. If you go to the Vivid Hosting website and you go to their downloads page, that's the one you need.
All right, thank you. Got it.
Yep, you will need to check the current version on your radio. Some of the radios shipped out with versions 1.1. something. Others have versions 1.2. something. And there is a different firmware image that you need depending on if you have 1.1 or 1.2 in order to take you to 1.3. And all that is made clear on the Vivid website. In summary, the inspection checklist is available. I was using it with teams yesterday. So please go ahead, download it, print it off, and use it to pre-inspect your robot. If you and your team can go through the checklist and prove to yourselves that you pass every item on the checklist, inspection will be very smooth and easy for you. Because it means that first, you'll pass, and second, that you know what you're doing so you can walk the inspector through quickly instead of having to be dragged through slowly as the inspector prompts you for every answer. Inspectors generally want to work with the students, not the mentors. Sorry, mentors, but it's just not your day. We'll be talking with the students. We do want the mentors nearby in case the students need help, of course. We don't necessarily need all of the answers coming from the students, but we want this to be their experience. As inspectors, we are there to help. If you run into a problem during competition, come get us. We have some great experience in the inspection team, and we will be there to help. We can help you with design issues. We can help you fix stuff. Some of my favorite inspection stories that I've been a part of involve getting teams back on the field after they're broken. Helping them out, getting them on the field, that's really why I do this. So please, utilize us if you can. And like we said at the beginning, don't wait until the last minute to get inspected. The earlier you get inspected, the better off it is for you. Even if you are not fully ready, if your robot's functional and maybe you have an arm or something that you are planning to put on, but you aren't ready for it yet, come and get inspected. Get what you have inspected. Let's find any issues you have early so that you can fix them. And then when you get other things on your robot, you finish up your work, just come and get re-inspected. That re-inspection is a lot quicker. It's a lot easier. We only look at the changes you made, and it will save you time and hassle down the road. Occasionally, there are disagreements with inspectors. Inspectors are human, of course. They are fallible. Sometimes they read a rule wrong. sometimes you read a rule wrong and you don't like what the inspector is telling you has to be changed. That's perfectly fine. Be polite, be gracious, be professional, and ask for a second opinion from the lead robot inspector. That's what the lead robot inspector is there for. We will be happy to come over, look at it. We will go through the rules with you, try and explain why we're reaching the decision we're reaching, and give you that second opinion. Sometimes the team is right, sometimes the inspector is right. We don't make any assumption when we walk into the pit as to who is right or who is wrong. When we make those decisions, that is the final decision, however. Lead robot inspector decisions are final when it comes to legality of the robot. If you are willing to work with us, we will do everything we possibly can to make sure your robot passes inspection before your first match. So if you are one of those teams who has not inspected when it comes to 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're coming by to check in with you and see, what you need and why you aren't inspected, be aware that we're there because we want you to make your first match, not because we want to hassle you. And so, try and work with us. Let's try and make sure that we get you on the field. We are there to be your friends as much as possible. If you have any questions throughout the season, please feel free to contact the LRI for your event. Most of the teams are going to these events. I know we have teams who are going to other events out of state. If you contact me or one of the other LRIs, we will do our best to get you in contact with the LRI for one of those out of state events as well, if you need their opinion on something. If you have something questionable, something you aren't sure of, talking to the LRI for your event is one of the best ways to get comfort around that, particularly if it involves some sort of design validation or actually examining your design. If you ask questions on the Q&A that deal with design specific questions, they tend to come back and comment that they cannot comment on design. As LRIs, we can. So please don't be afraid to reach out to us. We love getting pictures of robots, look at them, and trying to help you come up with the best solution for any problems you may have. Anyone here have any other questions for me?
John, I am going to be a robot inspector for the first time this year. Do you have any advice for new inspectors?
Read the robot rules, read the inspection checklist, make sure you're comfortable with it. Inspect your own team. Be critical of them. The best way to get good at inspecting is to actually inspect. And I think you have a week 0 coming up here next week that you can inspect at as well. It's a great opportunity for both inspectors and teams to get some practice. All right, if there are no more inspection questions, how's everyone robot doing? Anyone need help, have design issues? Or is everyone just done and waiting for your event to start?
Nightcrawler is going to be, the programmers are finally going to get the robot more than build, I think, this week. So I think that is a very positive move for us. We climbed for the first time on Saturday. I think we only have a few adjustments to make to our climber. So I think we're in an okay spot.
Anyone else?
3277. Last week we tested a climb, but our weight didn't bounce out quite good enough, so we passed on that and just started focusing really heavily on Coral this week and did a lot of programming, and that's coming along. Got L2, 3, and 4 all the way finished up, so now it's just vision software from there.
Nice. I know we have L4 working well. L2 and L3 set points are not quite right, so that's going to be working on tomorrow. But after that, I think it's all vision for us.
I think we're close to also kind of needing to put the robot on a diet too, aren't we? A little bit. We're pushing the limits.
We're 5 pounds under, and we still have brackets to put on, so we're close.
A lot of teams are going to be close this year.
We found an interesting thing when we were practicing our climb that if when you pull the cage back, if the bottom link wraps around the eye bolt, then you're basically climbing with that chain around the shaft of the eye instead of on the eye itself. And we didn't expect that to change our center of gravity as much as it did. But we climbed one time and the chain was, I can't remember if the chain was actually touching another component or if it was super close and the robot was really tilted and we couldn't figure out what was going on. And then we realized that the chain was on the basically wrapped around and on the bottom of the eyelet instead of in the what would be the top of the eyelet once it turns sideways. So that was really unusual, and we're not really sure how to address that if it happens during competition yet.
Yeah, Nate?
Yeah, I think also, Scott, as part of that, on that particular climb, the cage was rotated. So our climber like grabs onto one of the bars of the 4 of the cage, and it somehow didn't. We assume it's gonna just, the one that we're holding onto will be facing straight down. I think it was actually caught on part of our robot as well, and it was sideways, so that was throwing off because it was essentially torquing us a different direction. And when our robot was touching the ground, we were all confused.
That was actually a different climb, but
Really?
that's kind of part of the adjustment we need to make to make sure that cage stays straight. But yeah, we ran into 2 interesting things with our climb that we did not expect to see, and quite frankly, I think we were lucky to see it because it only happened once each time. So I guess that's a tip for all the other teams: is when you're climbing, spin your cage, make it swing, find all the different ways you could grasp onto that cage to see if that creates any weird side effects.
$21.81 here. Can everybody hear me? I'm in the middle of a kid bedtime, so it's a little unusual setup. I had a question related sort of to bumpers. So part of our climb, and we could move this inside of a frame perimeter. So this isn't like do or die, but we currently have 2 bolts that stick outside of our frame perimeter about 3/4 of an inch. We were contemplating having that part, like air quotes, part of our bumpers. They're outside of the required bumper zone, of the 2 to 5 inches or whatever it is exactly. Can you have hard part fasteners that are less than the 1.25 inch hard part, but they're not covered by foam? So as part of your bumpers.
Yeah, so your backing can extend up as high as you want without foam covering it. And I think that also covers your hard parts. There was a Q&A on the bumpers recently. Let me find it here.
And I could email you a picture, John, too, if that would be more helpful. But
yeah, go ahead. But basically, the Q&A had asked, separate high bumpers. This is Q142. Basically, they wanted to do 2 different bumper segments, one in the bumper zone and another up higher.
Yep.
Where the 2 were not actually connected by anything. And that was deemed as not really being legal.
Sure.
So
this would be part of the same bumper. So there'd be foam at the bottom of it and then plywood up. I should have had you look at it at Egan yesterday, but I didn't think about it. So
go ahead, send me a picture. I can give you a better guess. I'm guessing you're probably okay.
Okay.
From what you're saying, but picture says a lot more.
Sure.
Jeremy, along those same lines, when I was reading the bumper rules before we made our bumpers, I called out something different than last year. So last year we made our bumpers the backer boards 5 inches tall, and we used oodles and noodles. Those oodles and noodles are 2 3/8. So that's a combined height of 5 1/4. That would not be legal because your bumper boards have to be the same height or taller than your soft parts. And so your hard parts can go as long as they're in that 1.5 inches.
Yep.
For your dimension outside of your not frame perimeter, we call it robot perimeter now. But as long as it's within that 1.5 inches and it's connected, as John said, you can make it as tall as you want.
It just feels so illegal because it's been such a certain way for so long. So to say like, our plywood is this tall, and all these things, it's like I'm just getting nervous because I'm used to a very different method.
Well, making your plywood taller or some other backing material extend up is a great way to provide additional protection above the bumper zone. It's a great location to put sponsor panels and highlight your robots. Towards Scott's comment about the pool noodles slightly extending above or below the plywood backing, that is currently an open question in the LRI Slack. Because like you said, things aren't necessarily built to a specific spec. 2.5-inch pool noodles are not always 2.5 inches. Bumpers sag and all of that. And so it's entirely possible that your pool noodles extend, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch above or below the plywood backing if you cut things to 5 inches.
But below is okay, right? There's no rule that says that the soft parts can't go below the board. It's just that they can't go above it. It's the ramping. That's the ramping rule.
It's that your soft parts have to be fully backed. Is the rule.
Yeah, there are pictures in the game manual that I think illustrate that. Yeah. It doesn't matter above or below. It just needs hard parts behind the soft.
Okay. Yeah, and the example in the manual they only show above.
Oh, okay.
But you're right. The wording is probably to John's point, fully backed. Yeah.
It's a picture. Well, yeah. So what they show as being okay is with the backing shorter and with the backing both shorter and higher. Yeah, it says padding is not cantilevered other than in corners. Is how it's worded. So it applies both above and below. But the question is, if you have 5 inches of backing and your pool noodles are just slightly higher or lower, is that really making a difference?
Yeah, and sag
not having a little bit more backing.
With it being below, sag's a real issue, but I don't know that there's any way to resolve that issue, honestly.
Right. I think it's something that teams and inspectors are going to be trying to figure out all season.
I don't know if it's just that people are focused on coral and they'll add algae later, but we were talking about how there was only one. I wasn't watching matches. Our robot was a disaster zone, so we were just in the pit basically the entire day. But our scouts said that there was basically one robot at the entire Egan thing that was even like dealing with algae. Or in a meaningful way. Like one of them was putting in the net or putting in the processor in a purposeful way, mainly. I don't know if John, you saw anything different, but we just thought that was interesting. At least in this very early week 0, that algae was kind of there were more robots further along on coral than on algae.
Yeah, I think coral is a harder challenge than algae, and it's also worth more points. Higher point ceiling dealing with coral than with algae. So kind of makes sense teams are focused on it. I didn't actually get out to the field hardly at all yesterday. So I didn't have a chance to watch any real matches.
I hesitate to even call them out because I don't remember exactly because I'm just going off of what our student said. But Lightning Turtles 3100 were really good. 6147 were really West Tonka. I think were pretty impressive. And there was one more, and I super apologize that I can't remember what it was, but they were like buzzing about 3 of the robots. really doing well with the Coral and L4. And I just passing by on the way to a match, I saw at least one of the matches, all of L4 got filled. So even on this early of a week 0, 2 weeks before week 1, there were still robots teaming up to at least fill all of L4. I thought that was really impressive at this stage of the game, at least.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think the last one was inconceivable. So again, I hope I'm not like offending anybody, but I think that was the last one, 2530, and they 2530 climbed on the deep cage too.
Did everyone see the photo that first posted on their social medias of Becker climbing on the reef?
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't, it's worth looking on their Facebook, Instagram. I don't know what other socials it was on, but yeah, they forgot to release their Coral before they retracted their elevator, and they ended up lifting themselves about 3 feet off the ground.
If you do that at competition, that is not good.
What rule does that violate? Does that violate interacting inappropriately with the field elements or something?
Yeah, I believe so. Which I think is a yellow card and a major foul.
Well, you certainly don't get points for the Coral because you're still touching it. Does anyone else have any robot-related news or questions? Things that they encountered that they didn't expect to encounter with their testing so far?
Does anybody know what kind of gear ratio it would take for 2 Falcons to hold the 120 pounds or 100, not hopefully not 120 pounds, but 110 pounds of robot? Because we have 2 on our elevator, and just the brake right now is not even close to holding it. I don't really know what's on the elevator that we have. I think it's the West Coast Products elevator. So we're trying to figure out how slow do we have to make it in order to get that trade-off where we can climb with the elevator. So we were just looking at that.
Yeah, so it's not so much the motors that are going to handle that. It's the friction in the gearbox that you're looking at potentially benefiting. I'll tell you, we have a 100-to-1 on our arm reduction with a single vortex, and I could still move that arm by hand fairly easily. So you're not going to probably get there with a gear reduction. You're going to need another brake or a ratchet and pull system of some sort to keep yourself elevated once you've climbed.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say make sure your brake mode is on. That on those motors, that's only going to help. But it may be like you might be an order of magnitude short on your ratio for that. I mean, our and also your spool diameter or what's driving your elevator. I think our spool diameter is like maybe an inch and a half, and we have a 100-to-1 ratio. So ours at the end doesn't require a ratchet on the climb. So it's just a ratchet strap and 100-to-1 ratio, and it'll stay up for the 5+ seconds. So if you're using the elevator, which is going to need to be faster than that, you probably will need to come up with a braking system.
Yeah, that's kind of what we were thinking too. It's just hard to fit that braking system on there with the light or short amount of weight that we have to spare. So something we were looking into, but maybe just focusing more on coral and algae on week 1.
What gearbox are you using for the elevator?
I'm pretty sure it's the West Coast Products elevator and gearbox.
Is it a spur gear or is it a planetary?
It's a series of it goes out to a planetary a spur gear on a chain. So it's a series of interlocking ones that go to spur gear.
Okay. I know in the past we've used I don't know if you have any pneumatics in your robot. Is that something you have?
We don't have any pneumatics.
Okay. I've seen some on Chief Dog by some posts of people making essentially a planetary gear slice that is then controlled by a servo or something that puts a pawl into that, putting it on the motor side versus the driving side so it's on it. It'll have less torque applied to it, and then that could be controlled by a servo. Would be an option as well. You might be able to, if you have hex shaft, just find someone else who's designed something similar. But if it's an elevator, you won't be able to use just a ratchet because you need to drive that up and down all day long. You'll
gotta
need
have
to
both ways.
Yeah.
We'll look into it, but thank you for the input.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and share what we're doing so you can see, an option here. We've got our gearbox here. I think this is a 9-to-1 reduction with the motor and then a pneumatically operated brake. I'm pressing on it. So if you were to do a ratchet and pawl that you would control with the servo, you would put that on this side so that it is at the same level as your motor prior to going into your gearbox.
Oh, my, on there?
It's no big deal. Yeah, I always have your camera on. You're supposed to have your camera on.
Natasha, you look a lot different when you take your hat off.
Well, the other builder in the house was curious, so I'm like, here. He's like, oh, I'm on camera. I'm like, it doesn't matter.
All right. Well,
I have just one more question, if that's all right. I don't want to.
Yes, go. Fill some time.
We were trying to use max motion for our PID control for our elevator, and we were just dogged by issues yesterday. His name's Colton from Rogue Robotics came over and spent like an hour with our programmers, which was amazing. We just couldn't get the PID to loop to work with the Rev software. I'm not an expert here. Has anybody is someone using it? Can we just get confirmation from someone maybe that it's working, or should we just? Our other idea was to just skip the Rev stuff and apparently makes basically a generic PID that's not using the Rev Smart Motion or Max Motion or whatever it's called. I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert here, so I'm kind of out of my depth, but just seeing if anybody else has used it for an elevator PID.
We aren't using Rev motors. We're using Falcons. But Falcons have a similar PID built into them, the Motion Magic stuff. I'm the only programmer on my team, and we didn't have any luck with it. It just wasn't functioning like a PID would. So we just ended up making our own PID and skipped on the I and the D and instead just had P, and it's been working really good for us. Something to look into. But yeah, I'm not so sure on that Rev side of it.
Thanks, Briley. That at least has some confirmation.
Yeah, I think for our elevator, we're doing all of ours on the RoboRio side because we're using the laser can from Grapple Robotics to detect the height of the elevator and feed that back in.
They got it to the point where if you could tell it was going to the set point, and then it would just drop, and then it would kind of go to the set point and drop. It wouldn't go past. We were having the jittering, and where it would go you could tell it was going past and then down and then up and then down. It was oscillating. By the end of the day, we had it where it was going to it, and then but it just wouldn't stick. And again, we were sitting there kind of, and it was a long day, so we weren't. Yeah, it's all good, but we were just kind of well, maybe we should just skip on what we're trying and do something different.
And Jeremy, you have your motor set for brake mode? Because that sounds like coast. You set zero, you set no power, and then you drop because your motors are in coast.
That honestly, it could be that simple. I'm not involved in that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was just watching. I was just an innocent bystander. So
from what you described, that would be the first thing I would check.
Okay. I hope it's something that simple. That would be unbelievable if it was that simple.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Scott, because you have your command-based robot. You command it to get to that set point. It hits it, and then you terminate the command. I know, with ours, because we have those brakes on it, terminating the command is just fine because our termination sequence locks down the brakes, which hold the elevator in place. So we don't have to worry about the motors holding it at a certain height with the PID loop.
Back to your original. Oh, go ahead, Bradley.
Yeah, we kind of in the same boat, but since ours doesn't hold our own elevator's weight, all of my commands run the full cycle of the elevator, so all the way up, does the scoring all the way down, all within the elevator PID, so that way it never not trying to correct to the right height. So like for instance, I wouldn't want to run I don't have a command that puts my elevator halfway up. I drive over to the reef. It's like I'm at the reef, and then it does the full cycle. So that way I'm not having to deal with the kind of that same issue with it trying to hold it at power, where it's only held at power for a minimum amount of time. So that could be something to look at too.
And that would be the goal. We'd like to have a button that's L4, and it raises it spits out the coral, and then it lowers it all in one button. I think we were just trying to get it to even, do the first part of it. But yeah, I mean, I'll have to text and ask if we enable brake mode, because that's certainly possible. We had early we definitely we're doing more than we've ever done, and we can all kind of feel it. And earlier this week, we were like, oh, the can's messed up, the pigeon's messed up, like we can't drive, like we were like freaking out for an hour. We look, the can's not plugged into the Rio. Because we're pushing so hard in every other way, like we're just making these kind of smaller mistakes that we just need to kind of keep our head on our shoulders. So that if that's the answer, I'm gonna do some flips here. So
thanks, everyone. Nate?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, first and foremost, and like you're always gonna say to someone, did you read the documentation? Again, I am a build mentor, not a programming, but they do have some documentation. Well, while that may be helpful or not. The second is since you are using Rev motors, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, we have it's Neos and Spark Maxes for our elevator power. Yep.
So one great resource that we've been looking at too is there are Rev sponsored teams.
Sure.
I know that 111 has a build blog, and I think in the last few days they actually not only have they released everything about their build process, they have their released 2025 code so far as well. So it might, for those that are on your team that are programmers, to maybe look at that, maybe they can glean something from there as well.
That's also a really good suggestion. I'm nodding. Yeah, I don't have my camera on, but I'm nodding along with you. That's a very good idea. Thanks.
Jeremy, I wanted to say back to your original question on PID, we're using Motion Magic. We're all CTRE, and we're using Motion Magic. Last year, though, I think when we were Rev on several of our things, they were doing more manual PID stuff, like Bradley was mentioning. They calculate the output value based on a PID running on the RoboRio, and then send that power to the motor. So I believe that's how our programmers had done that last year.
Yeah, Rev rebuilt all their. This is again, I'm out of my lane here, but Rev redid all their software this year in December, about like a week before kickoff, and released it. And they were trying this Max Motion thing that we're trying to use is their answer to Motion Magic. So
sure, that makes sense. We've had good success with Motion Magic over the years. We usually will run either when we have done an elevator. I think we've always had a Falcon on there. Because of that Motion Magic, it does. I mean, anything PID, it takes forever to figure out what the right values are. But once you do, we've had good success with it. Well, I'm more than happy to wrap up at 8 o'clock. I was just mentioning to John before the call starts that I am severely behind on my sleep, and I would happily get into bed a half an hour earlier tonight if we want to wrap up this call half an hour early. So with that, I mean, do we have any final things we want to chat about? Otherwise, I think we should plan to wrap up at 8 and end a little early. I'm seeing shaking heads.
Being done early sounds great, Scott. Thank you.
All right, so let's give John a round of applause for once again giving us a good presentation and help us be prepared on our robot construction and make sure that we're following the rules. Thank you once again, John. I really
Thank you,
appreciate
Scott.
you signing up and taking slots. Next week, our topic is going to be autonomous programming. Nightcrawler is going to present that. I know that Afomia is planning on going through some of the things that we're doing that are different than some teams have been doing for their autos. Last year, we used Path Planner to execute our autonomous. And this year, I believe they are building their own commands to do the execution. So she and I'm guessing Caleb will be able to speak to the difference between the two and can give advice on how to use one versus the other. If you're planning to use 100% Path Planner, I'm sure she'll have great advice as well. Additionally, I have asked her to prepare a tutorial on how to build just a drive off the line auto so that every single team can have a good sample of just getting your robot off the line so that everybody can get those autonomous points. We had a funny thing was happening last week where all of our programmers were standing behind the driver's station. They were having a contest to see who could write the drive off the line auto the quickest. And I believe the record was set at 21 and a half seconds. So if you're a team that just doesn't know the first thing about auto and all you want to do is move off the line, Afomia told me that she would include that as part of the presentation to just get you a simple auto to get off the line in Java. And I challenged her to do it in C++, but I have a feeling that's not going to happen. So if you're a Java team, hopefully that'll be helpful.
So since you're just going to be right across the hall from us, since we're in Lake Superior, we can send somebody your direction if we need some help with that.
We will send programmers to anyone who writes Java who needs to get off the line. My programmers do command-based programming, but I hope to teach them how to do this in a loop, the iterative robot as well, because that is where I learned robotics 10 years ago. We were all doing the iterative loop programming. So if I can get some time with some of them this week, we'll try to get a sample for that as well if you're not doing command-based programming. All right. Once again, thanks, everyone. There are lots of open slots for topics in March. I know that we've got one following week one. I can't remember who or what team. If it's anybody on the call, is someone on the call doing the call after week one competition?
Yeah, that'd be me.
Bradley, do you want to give us a pitch for what our topic is going to be?
It's just kind of be a week one recap, what we saw at week one, what went well, what didn't go well, some common trends that are popping up. I know, like, if we were to think of it last year, like shuttling might have been a big thing that wasn't talked about before, but after comp, it'd be something to look at and be like, this is an idea that teams might need to learn and incorporate in their robot. So that'll be kind of, I'll give my spiel and then open it up to see what everybody else, what their take on week one was.
Great. That's fantastic. I think that was I'm glad you signed up for that because I totally missed it, and it's the perfect thing to do following the week one competition. So thank you for signing up to host that conversation. I don't know that we have anything beyond that. So if anyone else wants to sign up, give a talk, give a presentation, ask questions, I'd be happy to go back to get to know my team talks. We've only done a couple of those. So if your team is interested in sharing the ins and outs of how your team organizes, fundraises, recruits, breaks out their sub teams, anything. We'd love to have more of those. Those are always super fun, and I enjoy learning about other teams. All right. Well, everyone, enjoy your extra half hour. I hope you get lots of extra sleep, and I will see everyone next week.
Thanks, Scott. We'll see you this weekend.
That's it for this week's FRC Roundtable. Join us live all season long, every Sunday night. Visit the website at team2052.com/roundtable to sign up for weekly invites. In the meantime, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next week.